French GP was concluded successfully the last weekend at Circuit Paul Ricard, recording another easy win for reigning world champion Max Verstappen after the crash of race leader Leclerc. But that was not the predicted result for the French GP by the majority, even including the Red Bull team principal Christian Horner as well. After their stellar performances at the British GP and Austrian GP, which they showed a huge improvement, everyone kept high hopes for Mercedes' first victory of the 2022 season at Paul Ricard. The Brackley-based squad brought a floor upgrade to their W13 ahead of French GP2, but they were unable to live up to the expectations during the French GP. What did actually happen to them at French GP? Will they be able to end their winless streak at least at Budapest next weekend? We are going to answer all these questions by the end of the video. Even though Mercedes drivers record a second and third finish at the end of the French GP, that was below their expectations. After displaying some decent performances in Britain and in Austria, Mercedes were targeted for a victory at the French GP. But since the beginning of the weekend, they were struggling with an unidentified problem. During qualifications, Hamilton finished in P4, 9/10 of seconds behind the pole sitter Charles Leclerc, and Russell struggled a lot during qualification, finishing 1.2 seconds behind pole sitter in the 9th position. These results were able to leave the Mercedes team scratching their heads throughout the race weekend without identifying the proper cause for this problem. According to Mercedes principal Toto Wolff, the team has conducted a raft of experiments through the weekend, but failed to produce any answers. "We were slowly but surely working our way back to the frontrunners," said Wolff about Mercedes' recent progress. "There were good signs at Silverstone, and then we went to Austria at a track where we were normally not competitive at all, and we could clearly see the signs why we were not competitive, but we were close. It's a 1-minute circuit, and we were 3/10 off, which was acceptable. Then we brought quite a nice update package to Paul Ricard. The track is smooth, off we go. Let's hunt them down, and no performance, and we can't figure it out." They thought that the majority of issues in their W13 were solved after the British GP, and they continued that form to the Austrian GP as well. But they have experienced such a performance reduction during the Monaco GP and Azerbaijan GP, which were held just after the Spanish GP, that they brought a huge upgrade to the W13. On those occasions, the issue was mainly triggered by the bumpy nature of the street race track used there. But the Paul Ricard circuit has no issues, and it is a smooth track that suits to deliver the optimum performances of W13. Talking further about the issue, Toto Wolff said, "We can't figure out what went wrong. We experimented with rear wings, from almost the biggest we have, which Lewis described as dragging a parachute behind him this morning, to a smaller version, which makes us lose too much speed in the corners. Then, we're experimenting with tire temperatures and can see the gap to Verstappen. If you told me we would end up between 7/10 and 1.1 seconds off, that's a bit of a slap in the face." Mercedes appeared to be much slower at the twisty final sector of the Paul Ricard circuit, but on the other hand, they were slow in straights compared to the rivals too. Then, it is difficult to decide exactly whether it is an engine, aerodynamic, or tire-dependent issue. I wouldn't know whether it's the aerodynamic issue or not, but what we're seeing is that within one session, we go from totally uncompetitive in the first sector to the second run in Q3, where we're the best in Sector 1. Clearly, there's something happening, whether it's wind-affected or tire-dependent, that is just not working on our car. The car is on the edge, and between hero and zero, there's just a super fine margin that we don't seem to understand," the Mercedes team principal added further. 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton appeared to be struggling a lot at the beginning of the 2022 season with the bouncy nature of the W13, which was defined as undrivable by Hamilton. Till the Canadian GP, he was always outperformed by his young teammate George Russell. Since then, Hamilton again showed a huge improvement by recording 4 consecutive podium finishes, including the second-place finish in last weekend too. But he can't believe how far off the leading pace the team are, revealing that there is nothing he can do to close the gap. "I thought we'd be within 3/10, but you do a lap and are told it is 1.7 seconds off, and you are like, what?" said Hamilton. "And then you do a really good lap and you are 1.1 seconds off, and you are like, wow, there is nothing I can do in my power to change that. Everyone is working as hard as they can. Each weekend, we come with little upgrades, but sometimes it doesn't make a difference. That is difficult for everyone," he added further. Mercedes driver Lewis Hamilton was able to clinch the P2 finish in the race at Circuit Paul Ricard, and it was very important for Hamilton as it was the 300th race of his F1 career. He is holding a very unique record of the only driver to win in every single season that he has competed, and his record is spanning over nearly 15 seasons, but yet to record a win in the 2022 season. Former Mercedes chief Norbert Haag believes that the 7-time world champion can break the curse of 300 races. Only 6 drivers in F1 history have achieved the feat of competing in 6 races. Kimi Raikkonen, Fernando Alonso, Rubens Barrichello, Michael Schumacher, and Jenson Button are the other drivers to compete in more than 300 races, and none of them were able to record any victory after the 300th race. In this list, Alonso and Hamilton are the only currently active ones, and Hamilton has a better car now to achieve this feat in Formula One history for the first time. Former Vice President of Motorsport Operations at Mercedes, Norbert Haag, said, "Someone who has won 103 races in F1 and is still so happy with a P2 is a real racer." The prospect of Mercedes is not so bad. They work consistently. Mercedes have made everything possible and have put themselves in a position where they can take a step forward in the last 10 races of the season. The Hungaroring in Budapest is the racetrack to hold the next Grand Prix, and it is mostly in favor of Lewis Hamilton, recording 8 victories there. Mercedes are showing very consistent and decent performances in the last few races, showing a greater improvement race by race. The question is whether Hamilton is capable of recording another win at Budapest, fighting alongside with rivals like Red Bull and Ferrari, who are sitting clearly ahead of Mercedes in terms of pace. It is not a secret that Silver Arrows are now in trouble with an unidentified problem, and it has to be solved again before the race in Hungaroring on 31st of July. But Mercedes are expected to bring some huge upgrades to the W13 ahead of the race in Budapest, and Lewis is also very confident about it. The British driver is believing that next weekend's Hungarian Grand Prix would be the place where the team could end their winless streak of the 2022 season. "I was hoping at the next race in Budapest we could close a couple of tenths and be in the fight, though if it is anything like this, it is going to be a while before we win. But it is not impossible. Let's see what they're going to bring for the Hungarian GP, and they're capable of ending their winless streak." How do you guys think Mercedes will perform in the Hungarian GP? Let us know in the comment section below.